Oh, Kyle. Hey guys, welcome back to Live It Out Now. So we're still in our Overcome series where we're studying topics that drag us down and trying to look at how God, gave us examples of people in the Bible, sometimes God himself going through these things so that we better know how to, get through them and to grow from them. We're really glad you're here.
Yeah, and we like to talk about each other's lives, stay connected, that kind of stuff. Again, we use the DBS method, which means that we talk about each other and our lives and share it with each other. I just said that, and anyway. But
DBS. I'll start with my my highs and lows here. My high will be that I just had my anniversary with Rebecca, and that's awesome. We've been married 8 years, which is a long time. Time flies by, and I love her. And we had a great dinner together. So that's been pretty great, Every day is special, of course, with Rebecca, but it's nice to acknowledge when our relationship has traveled around the sun one more time. So that's been pretty awesome. My low, however, is not very great. We found out recently that someone in our congregation passed away. She was a grandma to someone in our youth group, just someone who's really loved in our congregation. So it's been rough, it's just, you never know exactly what to do or say, or at least I don't. I'm really not great in these situations other than to just be there and to listen, and sometimes that's really all you can do anyways. But that's just, that's been a real downer in my life right now. So, the prayers for families, or specifically the Lubin family in my congregation, would be really appreciated. So those are my highs and lows.
My challenge, I wouldn't say it's a low, but definitely a challenge for the past week, has just been trying to make some decisions. It's definitely kind of the type where there's not really a right or a wrong, and I always want there to be. It's just either or. And so I just can't decide because I can't be responsible for my own life. That's not true, but I feel that way. So that's just been my challenge for the past week. But my high, and really where I've seen God, they're very linked. I would say that I've gotten to spend some time with some women who I just consider kind of spiritual giants in my life. And it's funny because one I know pretty well, and the other, honestly, I've spent very little time with, but I know her well enough to have seen her example so much that I'm very thankful for it. And I've gotten to spend time with both those women in the past week and a half or so, and that's been really nice and just wonderful and encouraging.
yeah, so for me, positive for you as well is that you'll never have to hear me talk about Missions Day again, because we just ended ours, and it was a blast. We had a great time, and we became a stronger youth group through it. It was really good, and we got to work on 3 job sites. We got to build a retaining wall. We got to paint a lady's house and build her an ADA ramp, and then also work with it's called Family Promise of Tualatin Valley, I think, and they work with homelessness, and we got to help them build a shed and do some other yard work in their at their property, and just help the homeless through this thing, through this entity. And it was really cool to see us change that and have an impact, kind of vicariously through them, I guess. My also positive is I got new glasses and contacts, which is awesome for me. But my negative is I'm super tired. It was a long week. I'm dead tired. But I'm trying to ride the high because it was good to be a part of that. But where I'm seeing God work right now is through this pandemic, through, the social issues. It's kind of weird, but here we go. So through all of this, what I've been studying is what it means to be a Christian, what it means to have the Christian attitude. I've heard that word thrown around a lot, and without going too deep into my study and what I've been looking at, is this idea of the Christian attitude being not of one that pushes their political agenda on someone else or their agenda on someone else, but being unified through Christ as a body of Christians that love each other and support each other no matter what. And so I'm trying to, get that message across, that what we're here to do as followers of Christ is be unified with each other and share the gospel of Jesus with everybody. And so, God is really pushing me in ways that I've never been pushed before to create unity when there's a lot of disunity in our society and in our churches right now. So.
I'll share where I saw God, and these are kind of moments that you really appreciate in ministry. I had someone reach out to me that I don't talk to very much. I haven't been super close to them for a long time, but it was just an old friend from camp, and we both have kind of gone our separate ways and lived life, but she reached out to me and we kind of reconnected, and she's been going through some struggles, and it was just really great to have a moment where I can talk with someone who I haven't seen or talked to for a long time, and also just realize that maybe I made an impact on someone. We can't always continue relationships, but it's nice to know that I'm someone that they think of fondly, and so I've just been praying a lot for her, and just really appreciating being able to talk with her again, and just kind of rekindle a friendship and see how she's grown and those kind of things. And so it was just really great to be able to do that, and just have those reminders that when you build relationship with people, that it can last, even if you're not continually talking to each other and stuff. So it's pretty cool, the kind of relationships we can build on that foundation, through Jesus.
Nikki?
Like I said, mine's really just, seeing God in my spiritual mentors.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really important to have too. And just for all you out there, it's important that you have those people in your life as well. I'm constantly reminded of the people in my life who have invested in me, and so it's really great to be able to spend time with people like that. All right, so our passage for today is actually two passages. We're going to read from Psalm 13 and Psalm 142, because today we're looking at loneliness, overcoming loneliness.
And we didn't want the passage to be lonely, so we gave it a buddy.
Yeah, exactly. And also because it's hard to capture that. There's lots of places in Scripture we could look for loneliness, but David, as a person who experienced loneliness, he wrote about it a lot, and so we figured, why not go to the Psalms? So I'm going to read Psalm 13. Nikki's going to read Psalm 142, and because of kind of the nature of the Psalms, we're not really going to retell it, and especially because we're doing two different ones. But hopefully these two Psalms will help us, capture some ideas about loneliness and give us something a little different to reflect on. So here we go, Psalm 13. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Look on me and answer, Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. And my enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me.
To the Lord I cry out, to the Lord I plead for mercy. I pour out my lament before him. I tell him about my troubles. Even when my strength leaves me, even when my strength leaves me, you watch my footsteps. In the path where I walk, they have hidden a trap for me. Look to the right and see. No one cares about me. I have nowhere to run. No one is concerned about my life. I cry out to you, O Lord. I say you are my shelter, my security in the land of the living. Listen to my cry for help, for I am in serious trouble. Rescue me from those who chase me, for they are stronger than I am. Free me from prison, that I may give thanks to your name. Because of me, the God they will assemble, for you will vindicate me. All right, so reading those two passages, I mean, what do they tell us about God?
So, what's interesting, I think, about the Psalms is that we learn about God through, human eyes, human emotions, human experiences. And so it's just interesting, because sometimes, in the one I read, he's kind of asking rhetorical questions, but it's like, is this something we're learning about God, or is this how David is feeling? Like, how long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? I don't think we're learning that God forgets David. Mm-hmm. We're learning about David's emotions. So I think in some respects we really have to filter, out some of the humanity to really understand who God is. But I think at the very least we can at least know that God is someone who we can go to with any experience or emotion. I mean, that's obviously what David is modeling for us, and that he listens. Yeah. So that's just something that jumps right out to me.
Yeah. And I think, too, with that, reading the laments in the Psalms, it's a reminder that God does allow us to suffer. Mm-hmm. It's not, I think of like little babies, like people argue, whether you let them cry it out or you pick them up, or you let them cry it out or pick them up. And that's not a perfect example because, you do you as a parent. No judgment here at all. But, in a sense, sometimes I think God lets us cry it out. And maybe it's for a purpose. Maybe it's so we cry out to him, I don't want to dive too much into the why, but I think that that's what these passages kind of remind us, is that God does allow us to suffer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't really have that much to add. Just what Kyle said, what sticks out to me is that God just, allows this to happen. I mean, we see David do this a lot where he's just crying out to God, but he still goes to God because he knows God is the comforter. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's vitally important, that God, it's like a good friend, that you can just go to a good friend and have a good cry, and they're just there to comfort you and to listen. Because that's what I need. That's what David needed in this time, is just for someone to listen to him. And God was there to comfort.
Yeah, and sometimes the Psalms give us a little, intro or some context. In this case, like for Psalm 142, when David is doing a lot of crying out, it says that it was when he was in the cave. And I'm going to assume that's probably, the cave where he's running away from Saul, who's trying to kill him, and he's hiding, because he's being, hunted down, basically. So I can imagine you've got some things to say to God at that point. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to see the context there, and to recognize that, God does allow us to experience the fallenness, the brokenness of life, but at the same time, he doesn't leave us alone. David even mentions, let's see, where was it? When my spirit grows faint within me, this is from 142, it is you who watch over my way. So he still acknowledges that, mm-hmm. He's asking these questions, but he does know the answer. It's interesting.
What do we learn about people?
Yeah, see, I think we learn a lot more about people from the Psalms than, we learn a lot about God too, but it just says so much about who we are as people.
I feel like the Psalms a lot of times, they highlight the relationship between people and God.
Yeah.
So I feel like we see both.
Psalm 13 is one of my favorites. And I think it's because it's so raw and like angsty, you know, and just audacious. Just to say, you know, God, I'm here, like, have you forgotten about me? You know, and I mean, I've felt that way. And I think, again, like you were saying, like the Psalms allow us to just share our most vulnerable selves, all of our experiences with God, and that he wants that. And that we don't have to, like, you know, go easy on God. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a pretty audacious thing to say to God, I think.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think, you know, a lot of times when we talk about loneliness or even just lamenting in general, it's really common to like go to Job, which is fine and that's fitting. But, you know, in Job, there comes this point where God's like, I'm sorry, who are you to be challenging me? And that's, you know, an appropriate book to study in many scenarios. Absolutely. I love Job. But I think it's also important to come back to the Psalms and realize that God also does just allow his children to, you know, to be upset. Mm-hmm. And it's okay. And he wants us to lament to him and cry out to him. And it's not always met with the response we see in Job. And I don't know, maybe that's just me. I always feel like it's not really fair to always go to Job, and especially if we are upset and we are feeling lonely, because it's not always that type of encouragement that we need. Sometimes we just kind of need to sit in that lament, in that loneliness, in that feeling of being forsaken, to be able to cry out, to then be comforted and reminded that we haven't been.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about what this says about people and I'm thinking about loneliness, I mean, we could easily just talk about community, like, oh, if you're lonely, you just need to surround yourself with more people. Well, that doesn't always work, right? Like, sometimes we can be surrounded by people and very lonely. But to me, this says the very first step on the road back to overcoming loneliness is to lay it all on the line to God. In with the mindset that God is God, that God listens, and that ultimately we will overcome. You know, and we can hold that idea in tension with, you know, my enemies have surrounded me, I'm going to die, where are you, God? We can hold both of those in tension.
Mm-hmm.
For me, what sticks out about people is in Psalms 142, 3 through 4, or 3 and 4. You know, that there's people that are going to get in the way. Now, let me just read it. When my spirit grows faint within me, it is you who watch over my way. In the path where I walk, people have hidden a snare for me. Look and see, there is no one at my right hand. No one is concerned for me. But this is so I'll stop there real quick and explain that. Why that sticks out to me is, I mean, people, he's on this path, and we're on this path every day. And people are going to get in the way. People are going to do things that, you know, set a snare or, you know, whatever, try to trap us. And we got to shuck those people and kind of keep on this path. And that path is oftentimes lonely.
Mm-hmm. And he expresses that feeling of loneliness. No one is concerned for me. I mean, sometimes, whether that's true or not, it's how we feel, right? I mean, we could probably, every single person could probably name one person that they know that has some kind of care for them. But yet we still feel lonely. Mm-hmm. You know, ministry is very lonely. Mm-hmm. You know, working in schools is very lonely. You know, I mean, it doesn't matter if you have a community or not, you can still feel lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I really like what he says in just verse 5. You know, I cry out to you, Lord. I say, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. Mm-hmm. And so this idea that, yes, I'm lonely on this earth, but I'm looking to greater things in the midst of this loneliness. It's okay that I feel upset or sad or lonely, because if I set my sights on things that are greater than this earth, I will be in the land of the living. in the land of light. And that's just really powerful. I'm kind of jumping ahead into the next questions, but for me, that's what really sticks out, and the Spirit is kind of revealing to me is that idea that it's okay to be lonely. It's okay when we're going through trials, when people are in our way, or people are trying to trip us up. We just need to keep our eyes on what's good.
And to kind of jump off that point, I love how both of these Psalms end in this statement about the goodness of God. You know, and that song, I Cry Out, like I love that song a lot, and it talks about both crying out and goodness. It's pretty, I mean, I'm sure it was written based off the Psalms, you know, but that's something that I think the Spirit is like revealing to me is like, in our loneliness, I think it's real easy to like feel distant from God, right? I mean, that's a pretty common theme in humanity and in Scripture. But when we are able to be lonely, but also remember that the Lord has been good to me, like I think that we need to keep that. We need to keep a sense of that, because when we lose that, I think that's when loneliness can consume us and we can't really overcome it anymore. Because, you know, sometimes, I mean, I always believe we need community, but sometimes that alone is not enough to pull us out of loneliness. We need something worth fighting for, something worth living for, something that constantly reminds us that there is goodness, that we are good, that God is good, you know. And so David still has that, and so however he has that, I think we need to hold on to it.
Yeah. I think, you know, going to our next two questions, what has the Holy Spirit revealed? I know, Sam, kind of you touched on yours, but what has the Holy Spirit revealed and what will we follow? And for me, that ties right into, you know, how I plan to live it out. You know, I think for me, it's remembering that the crying out is an important step. So it's not just feeling lonely, but it's voicing it. It's taking it really through that whole process. And, you know, I think of even just times when I felt really lonely. I think college stands out to me because I definitely had a long portion of college that was very, very lonely. And I really didn't get to start healing and moving on from that until I admitted and accepted and lamented that I was feeling that way. And I did spend a lot of time kind of in prayer and in a similar tone to some of the Psalms, not as eloquently, but I mean, just in the, you know, kind of idea of like, I'm really upset, I feel really alone, and I don't know why you've led me down this path, but, and you know, a lot of times I did reach a point where I was like, no, God, if this is like the path that we're supposed to be on, okay, I'm not happy about it, but okay.
For sure. You know, you mentioned college, and I feel like I had some similar experiences. I mean, that is a time where we are growing a lot, but, you know, I can remember very distinctly, like, having those moments where I left campus and I went to, you know, I had a place that I'd love to go to be alone, and I would just, like, pray and out loud and cry out to God for like hours and just, you know, lament over things that were going on in my life. You know, albeit things that I look back on that were kind of silly, right? But it was the end of the world to me at the time, and that's okay. It doesn't, you know, it disvalidate or discredit, invalidate, however you say that, discredit my feelings. But like I can remember that, and I think that really was something that not just sustained my faith, but like ignited it. That actual process of crying out to God and voicing the deepest, darkest parts of my heart. Right. You know, because we're allowing him in.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense when you think about how vulnerability and connection works. I mean, our connection as friends is really largely based on how much we share. How connected I feel to Sam is more linked to how much I share with Sam than Sam shares with me. And vice versa, for the other way around. So when we cry out to God, we are strengthening how close we feel to him by our actions.
Yeah, and, you know, by that very act of crying out, we are no longer alone. and realizing that and remembering that. I think that's something that David, even though he felt lonely, he knew he never was alone. Even if he said, I'm lonely, he knew that he wasn't alone.
Right. And that's that sort of mind and emotional connection too, because you can know that you're not alone, but once you've taken an action of like praying, crying out, you're telling all of your body and your emotions, like we're talking to someone, so clearly we're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes we need to take that step of talking to ourselves to remind ourselves that we're not alone.
Yeah.
For me, kind of answering these two questions is, this idea going off of what you guys are talking about, but in the opposite way of when I do feel lonely, or, when I am going through something, to voice it, because I'm the kind of person that, being a cop, it made it even worse in me that I just push it down because I have to, get onto that next thing. And being a youth minister, being so busy all the time, I just have to push it down and then move on to the next thing because that next thing needs to get done. Well, no, I need to take time to cry out to God. Take time to voice that. And then secondly is to remember that God's got me. And then, verse 5, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. And to remember that always, to voice that crying out, but then also voice that, you know what, God, I trust you. Because oftentimes for me, I get to a boiling point, I push it down, I get to a boiling point, I explode, and then I just explode with nothing on the back end. With nothing. It's like
There's no healing.
Yeah, I'm just open at that point and vulnerable and or whatever. And I don't remember that God's got me. He's not my refuge at that point. And I'm not looking at that point. And that's vitally important to this healing process, to this portion, is to one, don't just push it down all the time. Take that time to heal incrementally, because if you don't, those increments are just going to get more and more pressure and it's going to explode. But then also, when I do cry out, remember that God is my refuge in the land of the living.
Something that I see an opportunity here. Not every psalm or psalm of lament does this, but most do. 90% of it can be negative, but the last couple lines usually are a reminder. It's like David or the psalmist is doing an exercise of like, okay, I just, laid it all out there, but let's bring it home and let's remember, So I love the last two lines or verses of Psalm 13. But I trust in your unfailing love. All of that stuff, but I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation, and I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. So seeing that opportunity in the midst of whatever crisis or conflict or whatever feeling of loneliness I have, looking for that opportunity to see God. And that's why we talk about that every week, because it is important. We should be looking for God. We need those reminders all the time. So that's the opportunity that I want to see, is those moments. I also want to, take a moment before we do wrap up to say, if anyone watching this is feeling lonely, we'd love to talk with you about it. Or maybe there's someone better who should talk with you about it, but we want you to know from us that we hope and pray that you would seek out someone who can help you see what those last two lines read. That you're not alone, that the Lord has been good to you, that you can trust his unfailing love. And sometimes, again, community is so vital to us, experiencing or overcoming, loneliness and experiencing hope. So we want you to hear that before we do close.
So speaking of that, we're wrapping up, and we would love to hear what you have to say. If you, again, Don't put it in the comments because it's a public place, but if you do feel lonely, reach out to one of us. We'd love to talk to you about it. But if you heard something else in the two passages today, in Psalms 13 or Psalms 142, we'd love for you to write that in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you hear. We'd love to, talk about that further, have that deeper conversation about it. Because I think it's vital for us to have that conversation about it. Also, we are at 80 as of right today. When we're recording, we have 83 subscribers, which is actually my favorite number ever. But let's surpass that. Okay. Yeah, we have 83 subscribers. We'd love to surpass that and get to 100. Once we get to 100, we have a lot of cool opportunities that we can do at 100 subscribers. So anyway, help us get there. Like, subscribe, do all the things.
Share this with your grandma.
Yes. Share it with your grandma.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see you next week. Live it out now.